So I never thought that I'd say this, but I just sold my house. Usually when people make videos like this, it's a positive thing, like they're moving on to something bigger and better. But this one, for me, really hurts because I bought this house initially with the expectation of never selling it. I was just going to keep it forever. But obviously things have changed. So in terms of what happened and why I decided to sell it, here's the truth. For those unaware, I bought this house in February of 2020 in Los Angeles, right before everything shut down. And for me at the time, it was a very nerve-wracking purchase because it was a lot of money. However, the house was located on the same street I grew up on as a kid. My parents were renting their house up the street for less than $1,500 a month while I was in elementary school. And they only moved because the landlord wanted to sell the house at the time for $375,000. And my parents didn't have the money to buy it, and so we left. Since then, I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to move back here because property values have skyrocketed. Things changed. But you know what? Over time, I saved, I invested, I got very lucky on YouTube. And when I saw this house come up down the street from where I grew up, I went ahead and bought it for $2.1 million. And if you're curious what it looks like, here's a tour. So when you walk in, this is what really sold me on the house. I loved it because it was completely private. You can't see the house from the street, and the entire place is surrounded by greenery. Like, you walk in and you have this really cool pathway that leads you around with like a table and chairs. You have a fountain right in the middle, this cool pathway over here, and then all of that leads up to the house. Let me show you inside. Then once you enter the living room, you have these incredible arched ceilings, these original hardwood floors, and this one is really cool, an authentic wood-burning fireplace. Believe it or not, you can't build these anymore. The city of Los Angeles doesn't allow it, but when you have an existing one, they grandfather it in, which is pretty cool. It's a fun fact of the day. Anyway, you have this incredible window that overlooks the front, and then that leads you into the dining area. This is actually where we started the Iced Coffee Hour podcast over 5 years ago, before we had any idea how big that was going to be. All of our episodes were filmed right here, and we really tried to make it unique. That, of course, though, leads into the kitchen area. We have a dining, kitchen, eat-in nook at the side. We have a very beachy vibe. I understand this is probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I really liked it. I like the turquoise color. I thought it was kind of fun, playful. Even found a microwave that somewhat matched. Then through here, we have washer, dryer, plenty of storage, and this is probably the most important room of the entire house. This used to be my office where I filmed all my videos in 2020. It looks unrecognizable at this point because what I did, I drywalled over the windows, painted the entire place black, put the sound deadening foam panels on the ceiling, put my drum set here. This entire room was turned into my studio, and then it took over a week of work to turn it back into what it looks like now. It actually looks great as a bedroom, and I didn't realize how much light the room got because throughout 2020, this whole room was pitch dark black. Then we had this bedroom here, which gets probably some of the best light in the entire house because the sun rises over here, it sets over here, and then we have a family of squirrels that would often play in this tree and would like come up to the window, which is pretty cool. Then through here, we have the primary bedroom suite, as they call it, which is pretty big. I love the natural lighting. You have another wood-burning fireplace over here, French doors that lead out to the backyard, and then you have probably one of the biggest bathrooms that I've seen. My understanding was that a lot of this was built in the 1990s as an addition, and for whatever reason, they built this bathroom to be the size of a bedroom. It's a bit too big in my opinion, but it's got a tub, steam shower, its own room for a toilet, which is kind of crazy. But then let me show you what I think is probably the coolest part of this entire place. And that is what leads me to the guest house. It's got its own private entrance through here. So this is actually something I've never shown before, but the guest house is actually quite cozy. You got a full kitchen over here. You have your own little living room, bathroom on this side with a shower, and then you have this bedroom at the very end with just a ton of natural light. Like, it overlooks a little area over here where you can do a table and chairs. It's got a door that goes out to the side. So you might be asking yourself then, why sell the place? The truth of the matter is that within 6 months of buying this house, We decided to move to Las Vegas. I was able to get a house that was double the square footage, expand the business, live in an area without any traffic, and just enjoy a higher quality of life than we were able to get in Los Angeles. And as a result of that, this house sat empty for a very long time. I mainly just held on to it as a good investment because it kept going up in value and I could let other people use it if they were in town. But once we were in Las Vegas, we just didn't leave. It became very impractical to pack up a dog and a cat for 10 hours round trip in the car to come visit. And if you've ever left a home sitting empty for more than a few months at a time, you know that things just break when they're not being used regularly. Like I would find that plants had died because the gardener didn't give them enough water. The fountain was empty and the pump had burnt dry. The gate wasn't closing properly. And I know these are all very first world, fortunate homeowner problems to have. So why didn't I just rent out the house instead, you might ask? Well, here's the thing. Anytime you own a property, you'll have to face the truth that your expenses will never stop. There's always going to be something. But what you can control is to make sure your money just doesn't disappear forever. For instance, most people just charge money on a credit card and then never see anything from it ever again. But with their sponsor, the Gemini Credit Card, you get to earn Bitcoin back every time you purchase, turning your expenses into a potential investment. For example, with this, you get to earn up to 4% back on transportation, 3% back on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% back on everything else, with no annual fee. Plus, Bitcoin rewards earned and held in the Gemini Credit Card have actually appreciated 279% on average. This makes it really easy to gain a little exposure to Bitcoin without actually having to go and buy it yourself. Plus, it comes in 5 unique stainless steel colors. You have black, silver, rose gold, Bitcoin orange, or the brand new XRP edition. All you have to do is swipe your card like you would normally, and that's it. Like, I've literally earned Bitcoin buying random supplies for the house. And if Bitcoin isn't your thing, you could also choose from more than 50 other cryptocurrencies that you could switch to at any time. You could also check out the description for more information on rates and fees and see if you're eligible with no impact to your credit score. So if you would like to start instantly earning Bitcoin, sign up with the link down below in the description or go to gemini.com/Graham. And as a special bonus, you could get $200 worth of Bitcoin when you spend $3,000 in the first 90 days. Again, that is gemini.com/Graham with the link down below. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the video. All right, now in terms of why I don't rent out the house, the truth is I much rather would have rented it and kept it long term than having sold it. Because this place is walking distance to the beach, it's the only property with a completely detached guest house. I locked in a 2.875% mortgage, and my overhead is so low on this that I easily could have rented it out to cover all of my expenses, plus a pretty substantial amount of profit. So why didn't I? Well, one of the biggest reasons I sold is that because I do not live here, and this is not a primary residence, I am subject to Santa Monica rent control, which would require me to completely relinquish all of my property rights indefinitely as soon as a tenant moves in. And if you want to hear just how absurd some of these rules are, get a load of this. First, even though this home would likely rent for a market value of more than $12,000 a month, according to the city of Santa Monica, the most I could increase rent every year is $60. Yes, you heard that correctly. That is equivalent to a 0.5% rent increase per year. Meanwhile, my property taxes go up by 3% a year. My insurance goes up 10% a year. My repair and material cost goes up 20% a year. My labor cost goes up 50% a year. But the amount that I could charge for my own house is somehow capped at $60. It makes no sense. Second, let's say I do rent it out because I genuinely don't like raising rents. Well, in that case, as soon as the tenant moves in, they gain the permanent right to use the property for as long as they want to. This means I can't just say, hey, something came up, I need to sell the house, here's 6 months notice. That's illegal under the Just Cause Eviction Ordinance. Instead, in that case, I as the homeowner are completely powerless, and the tenant's allowed to stay for as long as they want to, which leads me to third. Let's just say I want to move back into my property as a primary residence. Well, that's allowed, but only if I pay the tenant a relocation fee of $38,250 just to move back into my own home. And if I decide I don't want to live there for the next 2 years, I have to offer it back to the original tenants at their original price. And if I don't, I could get sued. Fourth, even if I do pay the tenant $38,250 and I agree to move back in as a primary residence for the following 2 years, I also cannot ask the tenant to move out during the school year. But here's the kicker. We have fifth, despite me furnishing my home with expensive artwork and hand-built furniture, it is illegal in Santa Monica to rent out a furnished home. So I would have to remove everything to comply with rules that give the tenants more rights to the home than the actual homeowner. All of this means that if I were to rent out my house, I'm at the complete mercy of the tenant and they are allowed to stay here indefinitely without me having really any say in it. And for me, it's just not worth the stress. Now, backing up for a moment, I get why these rules exist. No one wants to see families priced out of a neighborhood while their kid is asked to leave in the middle of the school year. It makes sense. But in practice, these rules completely backfire. It makes it harder for owners to want to rent out their property. And ironically, it makes it more expensive for the tenants these rules were designed to protect in the first place. That's why for me, I have zero interest in becoming a landlord and renting out a property that was never meant to be rented out in the first place. That's also why I am slowly selling off all of my real estate in California and optimizing instead for peace of mind. So in terms of how much I sold it for and what I'm doing with the money, here's what you came for. Like I mentioned earlier, I purchased this home in early 2020 for $2.1 million. And over the last 5 years, it's appreciated to a price of $2.7 million. However, in order to get that price, I had to spend about $30,000 fixing it up. Like, the landscape was completely overgrown to the point where it just looked awful. I had to replace some of the hardwood floors that were damaged. Termites had eaten away at some of the wood around the exterior. Areas needed repainting. There was a long list of things that needed to be done, including some staging, and I did all of them. The whole point is just to get the property to look as best as it possibly can, because flat out, the market's softening. Buyers are gaining leverage. There are fewer people out there looking to purchase a home than a few years ago. And if you don't do everything you can to price aggressively up front, it could just sit on the market. Thankfully, though, that didn't happen here. Jason Oppenheim and Shelton Wilder brought me 3 offers, all over asking within a few days of going on the market. And by the time I'm posting this video, this home has officially closed and it is no longer mine. This chapter is shut. This is all really bittersweet for me because as much as I enjoy and love this house, it doesn't make sense to keep it. It doesn't make sense to rent it out. And it's a 100-year-old house, which means I'm gonna have ongoing repairs that I just don't have the time or effort to want to put into it right now. Now, in terms of what I'm doing with the money, what's kind of crazy is that if I just cash out of this and put all of that money in a tax-free muni bond, I would be making more money from that than I would be renting out the property. And with the muni bond, I don't have any work, there's no risk, it's just sit back, relax, and get the cash flow that's higher than renting it out. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing in the short term, along with splitting some of it between a world market ETF and a little Bitcoin ETF as well, and just hold on to it long term and see how that performs. Now, in hindsight, from a financial perspective, buying this house certainly was not as lucrative as going and buying the S&P 500, but it did spark the very beginning of my podcast. It was home to some incredible memories that I'll never forget. And who knows, there's nothing that says in the future I can't buy back in if the opportunity presents itself.